everybody, and welcome to a special Father's Day edition of Gamer Dad, the show where I review all things gaming for you and your family. Today, I've got two very exciting things to share with you. Number one, a series of reviews of some really cool games on the Apple Arcade platform. And number two, I've got an unboxing and a review of a brand new Bluetooth controller that I picked up for my iPad Pro. So I've long felt that the touch controls on the iPad are passable for gaming, but I've certainly found a number of times where I've accidentally slid my thumb too far to one side and ended up doing something I didn't want to. Now, you may already know that you can connect your Xbox One or PlayStation 4 controllers to your iPad, but because I play both systems fairly frequently, and it's a bit of a hassle to constantly be connecting back and forth, I decided that I finally needed to pull the trigger and get a dedicated controller for my iPad Pro. Something kind of fun, I actually tried to use my Ouya controller. And if you don't know what the Ouya is, I would suggest you Google it. It's an interesting, small piece of gaming history that was a pretty massive failure. And unfortunately, it continues to be because this controller, I could not get it to connect with my iPad Pro. So I went and I pulled the trigger on this by 8BitDo. I got it from Best Buy for 35 bucks. I think it normally retails for about $45 or $50, and you can find it either at Best Buy or on Amazon. So why don't we start by doing an unboxing? Let's dive in and see what we get. Let's unbox this bad boy. The SN30 by 8BitDo, obviously calling back to the Super Nintendo era, my all-time favorite system, and that's why I chose this controller. It really has the feeling of the plastic from the Super Nintendo controller. It's about the same weight too. You got your dual shoulder buttons here. Looks like it's even got the same naming convention of the buttons as the Super Nintendo. And then, of course, two full analog sticks. Another reason that I chose this controller, they do sell a number of them that just have the old D-pad, but I really wanted to have something that had the dual analog sticks, so I'm excited about that. USB-C for charging, so that's pretty slick. I gotta say, first impression, I love the look and feel of this thing. I cannot wait to get started playing. This is gonna be a blast. On the back of the controller actually gives you instructions as to how to connect it to a variety of sources. In this case, for the iPad, we're looking at the Mac OS option. And here it says to press A plus the power button. And in this case, the power button is the start button on the front of the controller. So simultaneously pressing A plus start and holding is going to put the controller into pairing mode. Once your controller is in pairing mode, it should show up as a discoverable device under Bluetooth settings. However, just connecting via Bluetooth won't give you full compatibility. Instead, you have to do something slightly different. Go under Accessibility Settings. Inside of Accessibility, you'll find Switch Control. Click that, then go under Switches, and then Bluetooth Devices. Here you'll be able to connect with the controller, so you'll have full capabilities inside of your games. It's time for some reviews. I mentioned at the get-go that this is a special Father's Day episode, partly because it's when I'm recording, but also because I'll be reviewing games to play with or alongside your kids, complete with scores from both myself and my 8-year-old son. Additionally, I mentioned that this episode I'm going to be reviewing the best of the Apple Arcade platform. But let's start with a few things you might already know. First, Apple Arcade is free for the first 30 days, and then an extremely reasonable $4.99 every month thereafter. And that's the price for an entire family, up to 6 players using family sharing. The platform always features over 100 games, with new games being added and rotated through regularly, and more than half of which are exclusive to the platform. Every single one is ad-free, and none of them have microtransactions or any other fees. Plus, like every other Apple platform, security and privacy are baked into Apple Arcade. No need to worry about your family's sensitive personal information. The marketplace for finding new games is really smooth, and there's even a section for multiplayer and family games, which, as I mentioned, I'm focusing on in today's episode. First up, let's take a look at CrossyCastle by Hipster Whale, the team responsible for the classic Frogger clone, Crossy Road. Their new effort, CrossyCastle, is an endless platformer game with a bit of a twist. At the start, you'll get to choose one of a number of themed towers, 2 of which are currently available, many more of which will be coming down the line. Within each tower is an endless series of mini-levels presented as floors in the tower you choose. And it's within this structure where CrossyCastle separates itself from the flock of endless platformers. Each level nugget features a unique set of obstacles to avoid while attempting to collect gold coins and blue tea tokens, with the ultimate goal of making it through the door at the end of each level. While the obstacle types do repeat over the course of a tower's endless floors, there are enough types of obstacles and enough variations between them that this endless model never seems to get old. Additionally, the variety of challenges on each floor spans a range of difficulties, giving you a great sense of accomplishment after passing a particularly tricky floor, or a sense of comical relief when those hard levels are sometimes immediately followed by floors where you literally can't die. Adding to the fun is the multiplayer integration within the game. Up to 4 players using 4 different Apple devices can join forces on local Wi-Fi to run every level together. And as long as one player survives, the entire team moves forward to battle on to the next floor. Additionally, when one person collects a coin or a tea token, the entire team collects it as well, making teamwork essential to maximize the benefits of playing. Players of Crossy Road are familiar with the mechanics of using coins to collect eggs from prize machines, and with CrossyCastle, this reward system remains intact. Here the biggest prizes are won with tea tokens, 100 of which will unlock a new player avatar, like a cat, a giraffe, or a unihorse. Gold coins can be spent in a different prize machine, where players are rewarded with a series of increasingly silly hats, a gray snapback, a teapot, a banana, a traffic cone, all of which sit atop your head while you battle ever higher into your tower of choice. Roughly every 30 floors, players will encounter a boss fight, which upon your first encounter are quite simple, but once you encounter them again on the 60th or 90th floors, these bosses have upped their game and present significantly more deadly attacks. After the entire team has died enough times to deplete their 3 collective hearts, the game ends and a team score is tallied. Battling for an even higher score, the desire to unlock more characters and hats, and a series of secret doors leading to collectible gems should entice players to don their teacups and head back in for more endless action. With its deliciously colorful pixelated art style, incredibly simple controls which are absolutely improved when using my new SN30 controller, endless series of delightfully challenging floors, and truly hilarious collectibles, CrossyCastle certainly has my son and I returning for frequent visits to our currently unlocked towers. Additionally, we're both eagerly awaiting for the next towers to become available, and to overcome whatever challenges are issued to be allowed to enter them. For these reasons, CrossyCastle is a game that I absolutely feel comfortable giving an emphatically positive review, especially to someone looking for a game that's a blast for the whole family. Gamer Dad gives this one a 4.5 out of 5, while my gamer kid gives it a perfect 5. Up next on today's family multiplayer review roundup is LEGO Brawls, a light multiplayer fighting game from the LEGO Group. If you're walking into this game ready for the same old action exploration studs collectathon that LEGO's been releasing for nearly 2 decades, you're in for a surprise. In fact, I don't think there's a single stud to be found in LEGO Brawls. Instead, prepare for a 4-on-4 cartoony team battle, more along the lines of a simplified Super Smash Bros. Rather than a movie franchise tie-in platformer game, which I found quite refreshing. In each match, 2 teams of 4 real-life players descend upon one of a collection of voted-upon locations pulled from classic LEGO environments, such as pirates, castles, and Ninjago. While brawling is key, the main team goal for most matches is to retain control of a specific location for a predetermined amount of time, basically a classic King of the Hill game setup. As you navigate a level's platforms in an attempt to reach the hallowed scoring ground, interactions with other players give way to fights to the death. Or maybe less so death and more whatever you'd call it when a minifig loses all of its plastic pieces. If you lose the brawl, you start back at your team's spawn point, free to head back into the fray. If you win, you're awarded points, which are then added to your personal score. While each player starts the match with standard handheld weapons, enhanced limited-use LEGO weapons are randomly distributed in power-up bubbles hidden amongst the platforms. These creative builds can unleash comical carnage on your opponents with enhanced amounts of damage. After one team has managed to control the designated scoring platform for long enough to be victorious, the round ends. Individual player scores are tallied, combining points awarded for kills and for holding control of the scoring platform. While bragging rights are certainly an award in and of themselves, the biggest prizes to come from the fights are digital minifig parts that are randomly distributed to all participants after each round. As players return for more matches, more and more minifigs become fully unlocked. Between rounds, your new minifig parts can be incorporated into your player costume in the avatar customization menus. You can choose to go all in on an outfit or mix and match to create as many zany combos as you can imagine. You can even outfit your character with a variety of weapons, including my favorite, Two Fish, very effective. Obviously, minifig collection has been insanely popular with modern LEGO fans, so incorporating a virtual version of this into the game is a pretty brilliant move. Even smarter is the fact that every week features a new limited-time minifig that can only be earned from playing matches that week. Surely this is an effective way to drive dedicated players back to the battlegrounds. One very obvious bug that I uncovered in the game is directly connected to this minifig experience. When trying to scroll through my completed outfits, the sliding action was extremely jerky and resistant to movement. It ended up being far easier to piece together specific outfits rather than wrestling with such an aggressively stubborn bug. Unfortunately for the developers, choosing a completed outfit was probably the most difficult battle I encountered in the entire game, and I doubt this was an intentional design choice. All kidding aside, it's bugs like this that mar the player experience in LEGO Brawls. Another particularly frustrating issue, or at least another questionable design choice, was to make jumping map to both the B button and the up arrow on the D-pad when playing with a connected controller. When trying to navigate the in-level platforms, I found myself jumping as often unintentionally as I did meaningfully, causing me to expend far more energy making my way to the scoring ground than should have been necessary. This is unacceptable in a modern game featuring platforming. Knowing that not everyone will be using a controller to play, I did experiment with the baked-in touch controls for a few rounds. While the jumping became less confusing, literally everything else became more troublesome. I hope the development team chooses to adjust the controls and possibly refine the entire scheme for a connected controller, but this remains to be seen. Another more personal complaint that I have is the color choices that are used to differentiate team allegiances amongst the player characters. Being red-green colorblind, I was completely unable to distinguish if the minifigs scurrying across my screen were friends or foes. Consequently, I resorted to attacking everything that moved, a playstyle that I'm sure had all of my teammates questioning my sanity. While I certainly recognize that this is an issue that will plague few players, it's rare these days for a AAA title not to include some colorblindness accommodations, especially when they're quite easy to implement in settings. While not without its faults, there is a lot to like about LEGO Brawls. First up, when not wrestling with the controls, the game is legitimately fun. The action is fast-paced, and when you get the hang of the mechanics of the enhanced weapons and the power-up bubbles, their comedic value and pure destruction power are to be appreciated. Also, dropping into a game with your friends and family is made incredibly easy using rune codes. Simply share a game-generated rune code with your people, and they will seamlessly join you in battle. While there are a decent number of zones to encounter throughout your battles, each with their own unique flavor and varying themed gimmicks, a bit more depth of game modes would be a welcome adjustment. Thinking of all the game types incorporated into modern shooters, for example, I think there is room for the dev team to provide more options for minifig domination within the game. For instance, the most fun I had while playing was because of the novel introduction of the mech suit in the Ninjago environment. Rather than simply standing on the scoring ground, each team is vying for time in a single overly powered Ninjago mech suit. Whichever player deals the final blow to the opponent controlling the mech ends up taking over the controls, and is then given a chance to deal excessive damage to the enemies scurrying around at their feet. I really loved my time in the mech, and got a little too much joy from slamming my opponents back to their team's starting zone. Another important piece of praise I need to give is how LEGO Brawls incorporates human multiplayer, specifically regarding the anonymity and lack of communication between participants. I'm always pleased when I find a multiplayer game that excites my 8-year-old, but that also keeps him safe from unwanted or inappropriate communication. This game certainly scores points with me, knowing that my son is safe while still being given the level of challenge that comes from interacting with other human players. While I want to commend the game department of the LEGO Group for branching out into new gaming territory, I hope they'll consider adding more depth to the Brawls experience while putting some more resources into immediate bug squashing and control management, and maybe even making the game more colorblind friendly in the process. With all these things in mind, I'm awarding LEGO Brawls 3 out of 5 stars. If they fix the controls, I'll happily throw another star their way. If they add in a colorblind mode, I'll make them some brownies. Meanwhile, my LEGO loving 8-year-old gives it 4.5 out of 5, with his main complaint also being the difficult and imprecise control scheme. With all this Apple Arcade gaming, I've had enough time to put the SN30 Pro to a rigorous test, so let's talk about my thoughts in gear review. Right off the bat, I'll tell you that I'll gladly recommend this controller to anyone. In fact, I already have told a few friends to give it a try, and now I'll tell you the same. Here's why. First off, the look and the feel of the SN30 Pro in either colorway is pure nostalgia, but also that of a well-built controller. I'd be willing to bet the reason you find them selling for around $50 is because they are manufactured well with high-quality parts. They have a good weight and sturdiness. After over 50 hours of use, my SN30 still feels solid. I'd bet this controller has the potential to stand up to years of frequent use. I'm also very happy with the battery life. In my 50 hours of play, I only made it through 2 full charge cycles. The USB-C charging port is also exceptional for iPad Pro users. Every time I needed to charge it, I just grabbed for my iPad charger. No need for extra cables, which as a gadget guy makes me very happy. On a side note, having this solid controller and the SNES nostalgia flowing through my fingers, I finally decided to jump into a second playthrough of one of the greatest games of all time, Chrono Trigger. While I'm not going to give a full review of that game here now, I will say it's still a masterpiece, fully holding up 25 years after its original release. Additionally, the iPad port of the game is nearly flawless. When I bought this version of the game years ago and first started playing it, I found the touch controls incredibly cumbersome. Having the SN30 completely eliminated my troubles. Now, replaying this game has been a pure joy that I'll also recommend you. But if you want to see a full review, you'll have to ask for it in the comments. I've certainly captured enough play footage, I'm just waiting to hear from you that you want to see it. So, blow up those comments and I'll get to work. Now, back to the SN30. There are a couple of odd charging snafus that I think are worth discussing. To start, I'll mention that the location of the low battery light on the top edge of the controller makes it hard to tell when the batteries are running low. While I don't often look at the face of the controller when using it, I look at the top edge even less. I don't know how much of a difference repositioning the charging status light to the front would make, but it might be worth rethinking in future builds of this controller. Also, once the battery died and I had it plugged in, no matter what I did, the controller would not repair with my iPad. Here's the fix. First, charge it a small amount, then unplug it. Then try pairing it again, and when it connects, plug the controller back into charge the rest of the way. It took me far too much monkeying to figure this out. I don't understand what would prevent the controller from pairing after initially being plugged in, but I would recommend that 8BitDo look into this odd behavior. My last minor gripe comes from the pairing process in general. Pressing and holding a weird button combo every time I want to connect the controller seems clunky, but considering its ability to pair with so many different platforms and systems, it's a minor complaint that I can generally overlook. Overall, I really do love this controller, and evidently my son does too. When first giving him the option of having a controller, he passed, saying that he thought the touch controls on his iPad were good enough. However, during our first round of CrossyCastle together, he quickly became jealous. So we hopped back online to put another controller on order. To keep us from getting them confused, he opted to go with the slightly different original NES-themed SN30 Pro. While his dedication to the aesthetics of the NES weren't that important, the color-changing LEDs on the N30's edges went a long way in getting him psyched. All told, I'm happy to give the SN30 Pro controller a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Despite my few minor complaints, if you like the look and feel of the classics, there's no reason I'd suggest you search any further for a controller dedicated to gaming on your iPad Pro. Well, that's it for this episode of Gamer Dad. Thanks for joining me. Make sure to like and subscribe this channel if you've enjoyed this episode, and join me next time where I review Dungeon Royale. Is it a video game? Is it a board game? I don't know. Come back and find out. We'll see you then.